Hey guys, if you're in I1, and I'm bringing you a video about The Walking Dead and the final season. Now basically this video is just going to be my 5 tips for the final season that I think Telltale should at least think about while making it. Alright, without further ado, number 5. Now this one's a small thing, but I'm just going to mention it. Universe crossovers. Now what are they? Remember how we saw Glenn and Shane and Herschel in season 1 and we saw Paul in season 3? Those are universe crossovers, you know? Those are comic book characters coming to the game. Now, here's the thing. While I kind of like to see some of the comic book characters and stuff, at the same time, due to writer restraints, because you can't write these characters and have them do stuff that should affect the comic book world, but it doesn't, because then people will be like, well, why didn't they mention this in the comic book world or something like that, you know? So, due to writer restraints, you can't properly use these characters. Paul was kind of used to market season 3 because we saw him in the trailer, and it probably did bring some people in to play the game because they were like, wow, so cool, Paul, he's a cool character from the comic, let's buy the game. But what happened? Paul shows up, kills some walkers, doesn't do much, then mid-episode 3 he has to go back to his people. Sure, he shows up again at episode 5 just to save the town, but once again, it's just 2 seconds. So with these characters, because of writer restraints, I think it's just better maybe just to leave them out. We don't need anybody from the comic to come into final season, I think, because unless it's somebody like who has left the group in the comic and the comic writers don't plan on bringing back. I'm going to mention somebody from the TV show as an example. Remember that Spanish family, I think it was, in season 1 of the TV show that I think they said they were going to relatives and they left, and I haven't seen them in the show again. So maybe if there's someone like that in the comics, they could use them because then the writers wouldn't have much restraints because they could do basically whatever they wanted with that character because the character's probably not coming back in the comics anyway. But other than that, I think maybe just leave those guys out. Let's just keep it to maybe in-game characters that you can do basically whatever you want with. All right, number 4, fill in the plot holes. Now here's the thing. If you look at past games, they left certain things unanswered, seemingly for the sequels. And then when the sequels came out, they kind of still were unanswered. No. We can't have this. This is the final season. We need to find out all that crap that we've been asking ourselves. Find out different things, like what happened to Krista's baby? Or even what happened to Krista? Stuff that has been unanswered and seemingly was left out either for other episodes or for other seasons needs to be answered. Because this is the final season. If this final season ends, and we have a bunch of unanswered questions, we have a bunch of plot holes, is this going to be a what moment? What? Really? What? So I think they need to fill in all the plot holes, they need to fill in all those unanswered questions, so we can finally have closure. All right, number 3. Now this one is a kind of heavy task to ask, but I'm going to say it anyway. We need better characters. Okay? Now, season 1 had some of the best characters in the games, right? Now, I know the problem is that when other games come out, many people are comparing the characters from the sequels to the characters in the original game. But here's the thing. The problem is that even without comparing some of the characters in season 2 and season 3 with the characters in the original game, some of them still don't hold their own. I'm not going to mention any, but some of those characters still are bad characters, even if you didn't compare them to season 1. And another problem was that in season 2 especially, I want to say at least half the characters were carbon copies of characters in season 1. Kind of like how Jane was a lot like Molly. So we don't really need these carbon copies. We need original, good, strong characters. Characters like the ones in season 1, but not just carbon copies of the ones in season 1, because this is the final season. We need Clementine to be surrounded by strong characters that we will remember. Number 2, I feel like it could be a little controversial because obviously this is just based on my experience playing the game. Now, everyone who's played the game could have a different experience and they could have different thoughts, especially on this particular point. But in my opinion, we shouldn't play as Clementine. Okay, now see, season 1 and season 3, we didn't play as Clementine. And I think playing as someone who influences Clementine but doesn't get to make all her decisions makes more sense. Especially because in season 2, when we were playing as Clementine, it meant that a lot of the decisions that Lee made that influenced her, you could ignore. Such as if Lee was like, okay, you need to do this, and then in season 2, you could still choose, no, I'm going to go against what Lee told me I should be doing. And it kind of didn't make sense in my mind because a large part of season 1 was kind of pointing Clementine in a direction, maybe showing her right from wrong, teaching her kind of how to survive. So when season 2 came out and you're playing as her, a lot of that I think just got pushed to the side. A lot of that stuff that you taught her was like, nope, can't do it because you're playing as her. So it's like they could choose to do it or they could choose to do something else. So, and then season 3, when you played as Javi influencing Clementine, it just kind of brought back that leanness, I guess. And it was good. It was good playing as a character and influencing her, not making her decisions. So I think for the final season, we don't need to play as Clementine. We need to play as someone else, someone just who's maybe in the group or someone, maybe a new character. Maybe just a new character. But I don't think we should play as Clementine. Okay, number 1. Now, I feel like most of the problems that happened with Walking Dead happened after season 1. But this point I'm making has to do with a problem that affected season 1 and all the way back from episode 2 of season 1. So without further ado, number 1 is I think they need to make all the episodes before they release the game. Now, why do I say this? Now, let's go back to season 1. Episode 1 happened. Seemingly, they were still making episode 2 while episode 1 was out. Then, somewhere in episode 2, they realized, you know what? We need to start this whole thing over. And that's basically what they did. They basically rewrote the whole episode 2. This caused it to be delayed, but that's not the real problem here. The problem is that when you release episode 1 and you're still making episode 2, episode 1 is out there. You can't make any major changes to episode 1. You can't do it to fit episode 2's new direction. See, that's the thing. These plot holes and unanswered questions, a lot of them I think happen because they release an episode while making the next episode. See, sometimes it may hit you, wow, this thing in episode 1 doesn't really fit for episode 2. So if you haven't released episode 1 yet, you can go back and rewrite that scene and be like, okay, now episode 2 makes more sense. But if you have already released episode 1, you can't make any major changes. So you have to now somehow fit this into episode 2 story. And now it's like, oh, well, you know what? This doesn't really fit, so I'm just going to brush it off really quickly. And I feel like that's what they do a lot of the times. Like, you know what? This doesn't really fit, so we're just going to have the characters say like, yeah, this happened. So in reality, I just think they need to make all the episodes before they release them so that maybe when they're making episode 4, they'll be like, you know what? This thing in episode 2 is actually holding us back for episode 4. So let's go rewrite it. And they would be able to do that because they haven't released it yet. So I think that's what they need to do. They need to just make all the episodes before they release the game so they can write the whole thing in, make it complete, fill in those plot holes, fill in those unanswered questions, and make a great final season. Anyway, those are my 5 tips for Telltale. What would your tips be for Telltale when it comes to the final season? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Remember, like, share, and subscribe, and may God bless you all.